Welcome to my channel. Hi guys, how you doing today? I'm just on my way to pick up a few tomatoes because I would like to make some tomato sauce this weekend. And so that's about it. Later on, I'm going to be talking to you about the second part of our story on the Titanic story, and I'm going to be focused on the size of the Titanic, the RMS Titanic that sank in 1912, and I'm also going to be a bit focused on some of the features and things like power and what have you. I think it's essential to go over it briefly because we want to understand the enormity of this tragic loss and what an enormous vessel it actually was. Hi guys. So I picked up a couple of things and I thought I would just take a little water break here. And it's about 80 degrees today. And so I'm just, trying to cool off before I head back into the traffic. And so we're going to start a small discussion on the Titanic and its size and its features. And so, first of all, the Titanic, it was 882 feet and 9 inches long, with a breadth of 92 feet and 6 inches. And so her total weight, her total height measured from the base of the keel to the top of the bridge was 104 feet. And she measured, she was big, guys. She was very big. And so she weighed approximately 52,310 tons. So all three of the Olympic class White Star Line ships had 10 decks, excluding the top of the officers' quarters. They're not counting that. So that would have probably been 11, right? 8 of which were for passenger use alone. And so this little bit of information should clarify the enormity of the Titanic ship. So, let's go over some of those decks. From top to bottom, the decks included the boat deck, which on which the lifeboats were placed, and that's where they were stored. And it was from here during the early hours of April 15th, 1912, that the Titanic's lifeboats were lowered into the North Atlantic. And so the bridge and the wheelhouse were at the forward, hold on. It was they were at the forward end of the ship, in front of the captain's and officers' quarters, and so the bridge stood 8 feet above the deck, extending out to either side so that the ship could be controlled while docking. And so, wow. The wheelhouse stood within the bridge. The entrance to the first class grand staircase and gym were located along the raised roof of the first class lounge, while at the rear of the deck were the roof of the first class smoke room and the second class entrance. So, the wood-covered deck was divided into 4 segregated promenades for the officers and first-class passengers, engineers, and second-class passengers. Lifeboats lined the side of the deck, except in the first-class area where there was a gap so that the view would not be spoiled. So that sounds wonderful. The deck, the A deck, also called the promenade deck, extended along the entire length of the superstructure, and it was reserved exclusively for first-class passengers and contained first-class cabins, the first-class lounge, the smoke room, reading and writing rooms, and palm court. The B deck, also called the bridge deck, was the top weight-bearing deck and uppermost level of the hull. More first-class passengers accommodations were located here, with 6 palatial staterooms, or cabins. And so these cabins featured their own private promenades. Wow, that would have been magnificent. On the Titanic, the a la carte restaurant and the Café Parisien provided luxury dining facilities to first-class passengers. The C deck was the highest deck to run uninterrupted from the from one end to the stern, and it included both well decks. And so the one of them served as part of the first class promenade, and crew cabins were housed below the forecastle, and third class public rooms were housed below the poop deck. And so in between were the majority of the first class cabins and a second class library. The D deck was dominated by 3 large public rooms: first class reception room, first class dining saloon, and second class dining saloon. And there was an open space provided for third class passengers. First, second, and third class passengers had cabins on this deck, so they were all mixed together. And third class passengers, even with the berths and they were berths for firemen located in the bow. And so it was the highest level reached by the ship's watertight bulkheads. The E deck, or the upper deck, was used for passenger accommodations for all classes, plus berths for cooks, seamen, stewards, and staff. And so along the length ran a very long passageway, Scotland of road. And so it referred to a famous street in Liverpool. That's beautiful. And this is one of the features that I find so amazing about the ship, guys, that so many of the features were almost replicas, maybe not quite, of famous locations all over the world. Scotland Road was used by third-class passengers and crew members. F deck, the middle deck, was the last complete deck and mainly accommodated second and third class passengers and several crew departments. So third class dining saloon was located here, and so were the swimming pool, Turkish bath, and kennels. The G deck, or lower deck, was the lowest complete deck that carried passengers and had the lowest portholes, just above the waterline. And so the squash court was located here, along with the traveling post office, where letters and parcels were sorted and ready for delivery when the ship docked. Food was also stored here. The deck was interrupted at several points. And by the partial decks over the boiler, engine, and turbine rooms. The orlop decks and the tank top below that were on the lowest level of the ship, below the waterline. And the orlop decks were also used as cargo spaces, while the tank top, the inner bottom of the ship hull, provided the platform on which the ship boilers and engines and turbines and electrical generators were stored. And so, wow. So the orlop deck and the boiler rooms are areas in which passengers would have been most likely prohibited, obviously, from entering or seeing. They were connected with higher levels of the ship by flights of stairs, and twin spiral staircases near the bow provided access up to D deck. Wow, that's amazing, guys. And so now, let's talk a little bit about the features. And so, okay, the power the Titanic was equipped with three main engines for power, and two for the cylinder engine, and another was a triple expansion steam engine, and one was a centrally placed low pressure Parsons turbine, each of them driving a propeller. The two reciprocating engines had a combined output of 30,000 horsepower watts. And so the output of the steam turbine was 16,000 horsepower. And so the White Star Line had used the same combination of engines on an earlier liner called the Laurentic, where it had been a huge and very great success. And so it provided a combination of performance and speed. So the engines themselves were not powerful enough to propel an Olympic class liner at desired speeds. but the turbines were sufficiently powerful, and but the but caused uncomfortable vibrations, and it was a problem that affected all turbine um, liner, all turbine-based liners, and so such as the Lucy, Lusitania and Mauritania. By combining all of these reciprocating engines, fuel usage could be reduced and motive power increased while using the same amount of steam. So it was steam powered, eh? And so other other engines held water. Um, there was a furnace. There were 48 and a half tons of water that were stored in these things, and they were all fueled by burning coal, about 6,611 tons of which could be carried in the Titanic's bunkers, um, with a further 1,092 tons in hold 3. Wow, that's a lot of weight. I imagine it would have taken it so long to sink. Or would have, it was so heavy. I'm trying to imagine it and I can't, but wow. So altogether, these furnaces required over 600 tons of coal to function uh, on a daily basis, and they had to be shoveled into them by hand. They had to be shoveled by hand, requiring the services of 176 firemen working around the clock. 100 tons of ash a day had to be disposed of by ejecting it into the sea. The work was very relentless, very dirty, and very dangerous, and I imagine very uncomfortable. And so, although firemen were paid relatively well, it was still a very difficult job to do, and there was a high suicide rate among those who worked in that capacity. Oh, that's horrible. And so, exhaust steam leaving the reciprocating engines was fed into the turbine, which was situated beyond there. From there, it passed into a surface condenser. And that would increase the efficiency of the turbine so that the steam could be considered it could be condensed back into the water and then reused. So it was very efficient, wasn't it? The engines were attached directly to long shafts, which drove the propellers. There were 3 of them, one for each engine, and the outer or the wing propellers were the largest, each carrying 3 blades of manganese bronze alloy with a total diameter of 23.5 feet. So the middle propeller was slightly smaller at 17 feet in diameter and could be stopped but not reversed. The Titanic's electrical plant was capable of producing more power than an average city power station of that time. And I thoroughly believe that. That's very impressive and kind of scary too. Immediately beyond the turbine engine were 400 kW steam-driven electric generators used to provide electrical power to the ship, I should say, plus 2 30 kW auxiliary generators for emergency use. I wonder how well that was thought out. I'm not sure if that ultimately helped them any. Their location in the stern of the ship meant that they remained operational until the last few minutes before the ship sank. Incredible. And so, guys, I'm really suffocating right now, and I hope that you found some of that interesting. A lot of it, when I first was going over the description, a lot of it went over my head. And then I realized the enormity of it, and I actually began to get a pretty good idea of exactly what it must have looked like and sounded like and felt like. And I imagine now, I know, even with the development of all these turbine engines and tanks, one can still feel those vibrations. And I know that I'm one of those people. I get seasick, and oh, it's just, I can't handle that feeling. And so I imagine that it must have made so many people uncomfortable, even when the ship was doing fine. And so, anyway, guys, next up will probably be a little look at the passengers who were traveling aboard the Titanic RMS. And so I hope that you like this. It is fascinating, isn't it? I never knew that there was such complexity that went into the engines of the ship, especially a ship like this. And so thank you very much for listening and watching. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.